Hello, everyone. Welcome to the program. This is Politics Today, live on Channels Television. I'm Sean Kimbale in Abuja. So much, yes, every day we have so much packed for you, and tonight is not an exception. In fact, tonight we're going to be having some very deep and very critical conversation that you cannot miss. Well, one person that you may not have seen his face on television in a long time. I'm bringing him back because of a very important national matter. And of course, National Assembly will be explaining some things to us tonight on the program. So it's going to be an interesting one, isn't it? So get your seat, get your coffee, if you may, a cup of water, whatever, or even dinner. Let's get started, everyone. But first, let's check out some of your political roundup stories.
Former President of Nigeria, Chief Olusegun Obasanjo, has commissioned the Ichibiri-Agiama section of the Yenagoa-Uporoma-Ukobie Road. The 10.75-kilometer road, which includes the 150-meter Agobiri Bridge, is constructed by the Governor Doyediri-led administration. Chief Obasanjo acknowledged Governor Diri's developmental strides in a difficult terrain like Bayelsa State and wants the people of the state not to change a performing governor.
When we get the one who can do what is right in the position that we are looking at, let's give him the opportunity to do something.
The leadership of the Nigeria Labour Congress, NLC, and the Trade Union Congress, TUC, have given the federal government till Wednesday, November the 8th, to redeploy the Imo State Commissioner of Police or risk a nationwide industrial action. The ultimatum is given against the backdrop of Tuesday's attack on the NLC president, Mr. Joe Ajero, in Owerri, the Imo State capital. The union leaders are also calling for the arrest and prosecution of all those involved in the attack. The Labour Party in Imo State has condemned the recent attack on the president of the Nigeria Labour Congress, Joe Ajero, in Imo State. Addressing a press conference in Owerri, the chairman of the Labour Party in Imo, Mr. Callistus Ihejiagwa, says it is unfortunate that the Labour leader was attacked by hoodlums allegedly sponsored by the state government, and called on the president and the Inspector General of Police to look into the state of affairs in Imo and intervene accordingly.
We in Labour Party join Imolites of goodwill to condemn the turning of Imo State into a police state.
Ahead of the November 11 governorship election in Imo State, the Inspector General of Police, Kayode Egbetokun, has urged all eligible voters to go out and exercise your civic responsibility, as adequate security has been put in place to ensure that the election is peaceful. The Inspector General of Police stated this in Owerri, the Imo State capital, at a strategic interactive session with election stakeholders. According to the IGP, no security operative is allowed to be partisan, as a level playing ground will be given to all contestants and political parties.
Thank you so much, everyone. So let's get started, shall we? Our eyes on President Tinubu's promises, his aspiration. Now the Supreme Court judgment has been delivered. For the next, for the four years, he signed with Nigerians. He's going to be Nigeria's president, undisputable. And as far as we're concerned, as a people, he must perform and he must deliver. And Nigerian has to go forward. We are in that space right now, that the only thing that we have right now is for Nigeria to get better for the good of all. And so how can this happen if he cannot deliver on the promises and the mandate and the campaign promises he made to Nigerians? He said we should put him to task, and tonight is one of those nights that we put him to task. The 3-day ministerial retreat for members of the Federal Executive Council has come to an end. The president had on Wednesday sent shockwaves through the cabinet members when he named Adiza Bala Usman, the special advisor to the president on policy coordination, as head of the new performance bond, which contains key performance indicators. And he also warned that if they don't perform, they risk being shown the door. I mean, not the entrance door, the exit door. Now, the president, at the end of today's session, of course, spoke his mind. The SGF also spoke about, gave a summary of what has been said. Let me allow you to listen to President Bola Tinubu at the end of the retreat today.
The Renew Hope agenda is more than a economic growth. Like I said at the opening, we can spend the money, but we cannot spend the people. There's nothing you can do successfully without good health care, reduction in poverty. Like I said before, poverty is not a shameful thing, but it's not acceptable. Are we going to dig our people out of it? If you look at your background, no matter how wealthy you are today, there's a trace of poverty in it. So it's left for you and I to navigate this ship out of poverty.
It's heartwarming that the president, on one hand, understands that there's a lot of poverty in Nigeria. How they are going to navigate the ship away from poverty land into the shore of prosperity is in the from one P to the other P. Well, there is one thing in the middle. There is a bigger P, which is a problem. So from poverty to prosperity. How they are going to navigate with the P in the middle is the P of the president and his cabinet. They promised to do that. Well, that's another P anyways. But tonight, let's get a sense of what all of these P, so that the one that I like is the other P on the other hand, where they promise the prosperity, which is what every citizen of Nigeria wants. I'm being joined tonight by one person who has held not only one ministerial position, but two. And he's also been around for a while. He's been the Director General of the NESG, and also a former Minister of Information and Communications, Chief Frank Nweke Jr. He joins us live here in our Abuja studio. Thank you so much indeed for joining us. It's good to see you.
Same here. Thank you. Good to see you. Good to see you.
I mean, you've been in this particular kind of space before, where I know former President Obasanjo had similar situation where he had put people in the room to think about policy and delivery. But this kind of retreat, what do you make of it? Is it different from what you've seen?
Okay, well, first of all, Shenwe, it's good to see you. Thank you so much, and thank you for the great work you're doing for our country. First of all, ministerial retreats, not unusual. I think it's the right thing to do. And you ask me in several ways, it's coming rather late. It's been 5 months into the administration. I think this cabinet is probably about 2.5 months old or thereabout, or almost 3. And I think that this retreat could have come even much sooner, but better late than never. I think that it's important for this president and his team to come together to really, discuss what the president's vision is, and then the very specific plans that he has for the country. So I'm very happy that this retreat has taken place. I'm even more pleased with the clarity with which the president has spoken in terms of, the authority that he understands is vested in him, and the fact that the buck stops with him.
I mean, it's good that we hear someone who takes responsibility, ownership, and he's always said,
absolutely,
the buck stop with me.
Yes.
And I prefer someone who takes responsibility. Although I hate failures, but then it's beyond, the problem of Nigeria is beyond just taking responsibility. It's about performance. Now, you heard what he said about the responsibility of taking Nigerians out of poverty.
Absolutely.
Is on him and his people. The kind of policy that we need, the modality, the mechanism, do you think they are in place right now?
Okay, so first of all, I don't want you to even underplay the importance of a ministerial retreat with the president, okay? Because the easiest route to failure is poorly defined expectations. That's the easiest route, right? And any leader who cannot inspect what he expects is going to fail. You understand what I'm saying? So by having this team come together, I expect that by now, that before this retreat, that each of these ministers should have received a formal letter, as we did in our own time, outlining with clarity the expectations, say, from the FCT minister. What kind of, say, capital city does the president expect to have?
I heard now from the outcome of this meeting is that FCT needs to return to the master plan.
Good. And that was the kind of thing that President Obasanjo clearly defined in his letter to Minister Nasir El-Rufai when the cabinet. There needs to be clarity in terms of a letter to, say, the Minister of Finance. Okay, what are the expectations? What are the fiscal expectations? What are the macroeconomic expectations? There's got to be a letter to the Minister of the Interior very clearly outlining, in the context of the Renewed Hope agenda, what will this mean for internal security? What will this mean for immigration services? What will this mean for customs services? What will this mean for all sorts of specifics? It's extremely clear.
And I mean, perhaps, if we are to be critical, maybe there should be a quarterly review of those expectations.
So, I even believe that, okay, and you know, it's important, you know, having had this opportunity myself, so not just quarterly review. I even believe, given in the context of where we are today as a nation, the country is in very dire circumstances across every level and across every sector of our economy. That's the truth. Let's not deceive ourselves. We're in very dire circumstances. So for me, it's not quarterly reviews are good, but I believe that the president must be in a position to actually have an up-to-date information on what is happening, whether it's on a fortnightly basis, whether it's on a monthly basis. What else? What job else? Tell me what other job you have. You're the president, right? And if you understand that we're in very dire circumstances, then his time must be managed in such a way that he's looking at very specific key sectors.
He doesn't really have the time to change things around, does he?
Does he?
What do you think?
Where we are, I believe that this thing can still be done, but all hands must be on deck. The president must be at his very best. His presence of mind must be unquestionable. The speed with which he acts on specific issues must be apt, very, very top range. There's no room for any kind of failure or that kind of laxity or whatever. There's absolutely none. We're in very dire circumstances.
I mean, I imagine that the situation, that popular picture of Barack Obama sitting in the back chair, and you see the generals in the United States Army when Osama bin Laden was going to be tracked in Afghanistan, and they were commanding from the control room what was happening on the ground. And in that sense, we see that the commander-in-chief cannot make mistake. And I see the situation of Nigeria as such that there are those who are on the field, and the president, like you're describing now, is the commander-in-chief, and he cannot afford to make errors, isn't it?
There's no other person that bears the title of president in our country today. He is the president of Nigeria. And he's been elected to deal with the insecurity in our country. Nigerians want to feel more secure. I want to feel more secure. He's been elected to pull Nigerians out of poverty. Today, Nigeria is the poorest country in the world. 63 million plus citizens of our country are being identified as living in poverty. Nigerians, the unemployment is out of this world. Without, never mind the shenanigans at the Bureau for Statistics where somebody says that anyone who is employed for 2 hours in a week, then the person is employed. That's nonsense. You're playing the ostrich, okay? Today, the unemployment rate's in excess of 40%, based on a recent report by KPMG, right? You need to deal with issues of capital formation. Our country is literally broke. That's the truth of the matter, right? Investors are fleeing. Last week, Morgan Stanley had to classify the Nigerian Stock Exchange in a new asset class, showing that investors coming in here are coming at their own risk. All of these things must be reversed in order for Nigeria to be taken seriously, in order for the image of Nigeria to be restored, but even more importantly, in order for us to really put our economy back on track, in order for investments to come in with the much needed capital to really rebuild our country. You need to look at issues of infrastructure deficit, all right, as a matter of priority. And you know, when we talk about infrastructure, there's this tendency to believe that it is for the purposes of bringing in private investment. I want to drive on smooth roads as a citizen. I want to feel secure as a citizen. I want a policy environment that will enable me to carry on my business as a citizen. I want a policy environment and a fiscal policy environment that will allow the creation of jobs as a matter of routine so that youngsters can have employment, okay? And so that the current brain drain is mitigated. I want a healthcare system that works. So all of these circumstances I've described are basic circumstances that you need even as citizens, which will therefore benefit even foreign investors when they come. So let's not make it sound as if something special is being done. You want to create a conducive environment. First of all, create a conducive environment for us to even have a good life as citizens. It's basic. It is those same circumstances that foreign investors require. I want to be able to go to a judiciary that I know will dispense justice in a fair, equitable, and logical manner. Read my lips, right? It says foreign investors also want a judiciary that works. I'm not going to fix the judiciary because I want foreign investors to be able to protect property rights or to ensure speedy disposition of disputes and things like that. This is the same kind of judiciary, the qualities of a judiciary that I want as citizens. And I believe I speak the minds of everybody.
It's even trite. What you are saying is that in other crimes, when the judiciary or your legal system is faulty, then it creates a lot of problem for foreign direct investment because people will say, if I put my money there in an uneven, unstable legal system, anything can happen. I mean, policy, somersault and all of that, you lose your money easily because no legal system to protect you. I mean, if there are things, because you mentioned creating an environment that citizens can operate in and also a judicial system that works, so you're talking about economy reformation and judicial reformation.
They go side by side. You can't divorce one from the other.
These are immediate low-hanging fruit that must be done, isn't it?
Low-hanging fruits that can be done, right? People want disputes to be resolved very quickly. People want predictability. And so when you have a judicial system that undermines our jurisprudence, the very history, the very essence of what we are, right? Then the only way to go is for our democracy to become comatose.
Chief Nweke, you managed the Obasanjo, the public perception of Obasanjo government as a Minister of Information and Communications and the information that came out of that government. For someone who understands that kind of task at that level, how much of the reputation of this government will help this government deliver on its mandate? Because is that important, though?
It is extreme. Listen, you know, unfortunately, there's a tendency to actually trivialize the importance of communication in public governance, which is regrettable. Really regrettable. Why? Because, listen, if you have asked for my mandate, if you've sought for my mandate as a citizen, and I have given you my mandate, right, I have a right to know what you are doing with that mandate. In fact, it is in your interest that you communicate to me what you're doing because you're probably going to come back next time. It is in your interest to actually ensure that I'm engaged because there are certain aspects of the policy, the policies you're going to put out that require my support in order for them to work. So communication is so important. But I'll tell you something else, right? It's not just going to be communication for the sake of communication. You must understand that there's a difference between the kind of massive propaganda you undertake or you mount when you are campaigning and the kind of communication you need when you have won elections. Elections have been won. I want to suggest most respectfully to government that the propaganda about what we're going to do, what we're not going to do is over. Right now, I'm interested in knowing what you say you're going to do, how are you going to do it? How are you doing it on a daily basis? It's extremely important. The citizens have a right to know. Abridgment of press freedoms, abridgment of human rights, abridgment of the right of expression, right? Abridgment of that right to know, it has no place in a democracy, and it is ultimately going to backfire.
I mean there are situations where ministers in cabinet will not even accede to interviews. Well, I mean, it looks as though sometimes you almost will prostrate and beg for public officers to come and talk about policy decisions. Does that make sense?
No, you see, Sean, it is a very disrespectful position to take. You're a public servant. That is what you are. You don't even have a choice, as a matter of fact. The only thing I request of citizens is that, you see, engagement must be respectful. Engagement must be respectful. Incessant abuse or the use of poor language, bad language on public officials it should have no place in our democracy, in our society. But public servants have a responsibility to communicate to the Nigerian citizens what they are doing, and questions must be answered on a regular basis. Let me also tell you something else, even to go back specifically to the question you asked. The safest way to ensure that you don't have public backlash is, one, volunteer the information in advance.
So you prepare
information, you prepare the grounds, volunteer the information in advance, because this is a public matter. It's a matter of it's a matter of public interest. So why are you hiding from the kitchen what you're cooking inside the pot? Kilode? Why? So if this thing you're serving me, I want to know how you're serving me. I want to know how well you're serving me. If you do not open the books, if you do not communicate with me, how will I know? If I'm asking you and you are attacking me and insulting me or threatening me and even having me arrested, then something is wrong. Something is definitely wrong.
And there's a popular attitude, arrogance of office. It's so annoying, especially when you are in the communication space and you see the sense of arrogance that is being portrayed by those who are appointed into office and some elected people into office who have the trust of the Nigerian people in their hands, but they will never be accountable. They will never speak to the issues.
I believe that I couldn't say more than what I've said already. I believe that public servants have a responsibility to communicate with clarity, to communicate factually to the citizens of this country what they are doing on our behalves, what they are doing with the mandate that has been given to them, right? What they're doing with the offices to which they have been appointed. And I think that even the president, hopefully, should take some interest in this. He can only do so much for himself, which is why he has a cabinet. So I believe that there should be a specific directive to ministers and the ministries, departments, and agencies on the importance of this public communication and the need for them to communicate with clarity on the president's renewed hope agenda and the key elements which they're interested, in engaging the public on. Okay, but the other thing that I must say is this: sometimes you're going to find the kind of reticence that you find from, say, public officials for a number of reasons. What's this, right? There are people who may not just be, they may not just have the capacity to maybe for public speaking. That's one way to look at it. Sometimes it's just pure incompetence in some respects. In some other cases, it might just border on ignorance. Or I'm here, I'm the minister, or I'm the governor, and therefore you cannot question me. I couldn't think of anything more impolitic and anything more self-defeating. And so, but I think that things would be a lot easier if, for instance, you are making progress and you're able to communicate this progress. So there's something for you to look forward to communicating. Like when I worked in the cabinet, of course, I believe a lot was going on. A lot was going on in terms of reforms, in terms of achievement, and this was a time when you found, even Nigerians returning to the country, right? Relocating from the country, because there was that sense of progress, and it was there, and it was, and people lived it, people experienced it. So I think that the best way is let there be, verifiable, factual progress, and you see that citizens of this country are happy to engage, are happy to support you.
I'd like to take you to a tough where it is good for us to lock ourselves in the room and tell ourselves the home truth, because before this roof crumbles on all of us.
Yes.
Can we tell ourselves the truth tonight? If the president is getting it wrong, if we can give ourselves the knocks and get it right, it's better. So in the future, the way they have started, and they say, look, the evening or the afternoon is going to be successful largely by what you do early in the morning.
Absolutely.
From the way they have started, are they starting right from your own point of view?
Well, I don't know from which point you're looking at. Was it from?
In terms of look, you get into government, what you're going to do is about the policy that you have promised. And you need to identify those promises. You need to put them in a sound frame and be able to run with it. But from what you have said earlier, that they're starting rather late. But now they've started. But in the manner in which they're going about it, the attitude of the president, what the president is saying, the kind of environment that we sense, in fact, there are those who are saying that there might be a possible reshuffle of the cabinet or whatever. that may be happening. Do you think that the right footing is being taken?
Well, Sheung, well, thank you so much. Sometimes, I'm not in government at the time, so there might be things that one might not be able to speak to with some clarity. But let me say this, right? First of all, I have my concerns about certain aspects of certain decisions that have been taken, for instance. This decision to expand this cabinet, right, which even at about 43, 42 at the time, now. It's almost 50 now. Given our the dire economic circumstances in which we are, for me, I don't know what the consideration is, but from an outsider perspective, I think that if I had a chance to make an input, I would say that we must do everything that is practical to reduce the cost of government, to reduce the size of government at this time, not to expand it, not to increase the cost of government. Then, of course, if I had a chance to make an input, I would express very deep concerns about the thrust of the supplementary budget, for instance, certain expenditures being, that have been suggested for certain things that we absolutely do not need at this time. So the other way to look at it is, look, the proliferation of these ministries, you're going to look at some of them and you're asking, why is this ministry here and you still have this one, right? Some of these ministries ought to coexist. But I probably think maybe because of political pressure, he needed to, expand it to accommodate people. That's a possibility. But you see, it brings me to the issue of political will. It brings me to the issue of, the president's patriotic instincts, right? What should take precedence? Is it this loyalty to supporters, or it is loyalty to Nigeria, loyalty to the majority of the citizens whose votes you have received? Or is it just to vested interests? It's a dilemma. But if I were the president at this time, I would choose the citizens over those vested political interests.
You mentioned some of these items, like yesterday we were dealing with that matter too. The number of vehicles to the State House, to the wife of the president, to the office of the president. And they said the yacht here has now been although we are hearing also that in fact it has been received, that the full payment has not been made, but it was outlined in that budget. It does look like there is a craze for buying vehicles in government. And in all of this, in fact, I don't know how long you've stayed in Abuja in the last days, but each time I'm driving home or each time I'm going home, I see long convoy and that's not the president. Sometimes it's not the FCT minister. And there are those, there are a lot of big people in Abuja, and there are convoys upon convoys upon convoys, and some of these vehicles are foreign-made vehicles. Is there an attitude of government that shows that they really care about the average Nigerian people, where you are flaunting wealth in the face of those who are living in abject poverty? Is there a way that the cost of governance can be cut down by, in fact, the manner in which the president himself will show to his cabinet and Nigerians that they are really serious about the level of poverty in the land?
Absolutely. The president has ultimate responsibility. The mandate is his. The legacy that will be created or lack thereof will be his legacy. And I hope that he understands that history beckons. I hope that our president understands that he has a tremendous opportunity to really deal with the significant public trust issues that accompany the administration. I hope that the president understands that he has a great opportunity to really, really win the trust of the majority of the citizens of this country. But this trust cannot be won if, he appears or he's seen to partake and support the kind of profligacy that we now see, that you have described. I don't think that he can end this trust if the people feel that whilst we're being asked to make sacrifices, that the leadership, whether it's in the National Assembly or in the executive, across the states, across the country, that they're not making similar sacrifices. And so the cost of governance must be reduced. And let me tell you something. Sheung, I watched that session you had with some senator, I don't remember who he was, and just the seeming inability to understand basic economics is just what hurts me the most. And what do I mean by this? You are spending 160 million naira per vehicle in an economy where you are borrowing to fund recurrent expenditure, an economy where you are spending over 100% of your earnings to service debt, right? In an economy where unemployment is as high as 40%, where poverty is endemic, you are spending 160 million naira per vehicle per one individual senator in this country at this time. Talking about basic economics, what does it tell me? So look at, where do these vehicles come from? Where these vehicles come from, it just means that the motor companies have to keep people in employment in order to produce it, right? And so you have motor assembling companies in Nigeria. However inadequate they might be, whatever their shortcomings, right? This is what we have now. And then in order for these motor companies to continue to operate, they need to be patronized. Now, if they're not patronized, how can they keep operating, right? In order to bring down the unemployment, then you must actually ensure that you support the owners of these, the operators of these motor companies, in order for our youngsters to be trained, in order for them to be employed, in order for them to be able to put food on the table, in order for you to mitigate insecurity, in order for you to mitigate criminality, in order for children, the fees of school children to be paid. That's why you need to support these industries. Don't forget what happened. In America, I think it was in 2009, under President Obama, when there was this global recession and the motor industry was severely affected, right? Now, President Obama understood very clearly that if the American government did not intervene in that sector, that, you know, a lot of people were going to go out to work. And it was going to have dire implications for, not just for the industry, but for the overall economy. That is what it is today in Nigeria. But our people fail to understand it, right? So all these vehicles that are coming, they're coming from somewhere. You are boosting the economy of those countries to the detriment of your own economy. There's even something I thought you might have asked, right? Okay? The last National Assembly, 4 years prior, vehicles were also procured. 8 years prior, vehicles were also procured. What is the method of actually depreciating those vehicles, right? Why is it that every 4 years you need a new one? Why is that? Why should that be the case? At whose expense are these vehicles being procured? One of the things you read out was actually the RAMFAC law and everything. Yes. You stated it there. So we must go further to find out, okay, fine. Having flouted, at whose expenses are these vehicles being procured? Do these senators eventually pay for it? The House of Reps, do they eventually pay for it? And when they are leaving, they're also given severance allowance. So the failure to understand that, you know what, we are undermining our own economy. We're undermining our youth who desperately need jobs.
Nord car production company, which is owned by Young Nigeria.
Yes.
Innocent is there also.
Yes.
And they are all Peugeot, GAC, and
all these guys are there.
They are putting it together.
Absolutely.
Well,
they're there.
Yeah, Mr. Nweke, to finalize on this conversation, we are in a dire strait. We are at a moment where we cannot lack leadership focus in this country.
Absolutely.
As a final thought tonight on this program, what would you say that the president, because he's the man that is charting the line now, what do you think he must do to get Nigeria working now?
Well, first of all, he must recognize that he's the president. Campaigns are over. He's the president of all of Nigeria, irrespective of political leanings. Who supported, who didn't support, it doesn't matter anymore. You're now the president of Nigeria. He must understand that where we are today, he needs to take some extremely bold decisions, not just bold for the sake of being described as bold, but bold in practical and pragmatic terms, bold in a way that will help to turn around our economy. Mr. President should please understand that, yes, I don't know what you want to do with your cabinet. There are some fine gentlemen and women there. Please make sure they're in the right places. But more importantly, define your expectations. Define your expectations ministry by ministry. When I was in the cabinet, we actually had weekly reviews. Members of the economic management team, we had 2 hours ahead of the federal executive cabinet meetings. We would come in 2 hours ahead to actually review certain critical sectors of the economy before the cabinet convened. And so this helped every cabinet member, when they come, to know that when we come in every Wednesday, the President Obasanjo was interested in knowing, what are you doing with this ministry? What are you doing with this program? What are you doing with these initiatives we've agreed? Those questions were asked on a weekly basis. And most people will be shaken if you're not doing what you're supposed to do. So for me, I believe that it's in the interest of the entire citizenry of this country to wish Mr. President well, to wish the administration well. It's in our interest as well. It's in our interest because we want to live in peace, we want to live in prosperity, we want to have a country that we can be proud of. It's in our interest. And I hope that every Nigerian, irrespective of political affiliation, irrespective of ethnicity, would understand that at this point in our history, we must all come together to really support the administration, support the president, to really turn our country around.
Frank Nweke, thank you so much indeed. A former Minister for Information and Communication, former Director General of the NESG. Thank you so much indeed for your time tonight. I appreciate it.
Thank you,
and those thoughts. And it's good to drag you out on television at this time.
Thank you.
Very reluctant, but you see how impactful it could be.
Well, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I appreciate it. We'll take a break, everyone. But when we return from the break, the spokesperson of the House of Representatives will be joining us. There are critical questions that Frank Nweke and a lot of Nigerians are asking about the cost of governance, the budget, the vehicles, and we might be getting some answers tonight. Join us again, everyone. Thank you so much, everyone. Let's get back to our conversation about the supplementary budget. It's 2.17 trillion that has been approved by the National Assembly, and they've been given explanation on some of their reasons and actions on what the president proposed and passed on to the National Assembly. I'm being joined tonight by the spokesperson of the House of Representatives, Honorable Akin Rotimi. He's a member of the House of Representatives, a member of the APC from Ekiti State. Thank you so much, Honorable, for joining us tonight.
Thank you very much for having me, Sheun. Good evening, viewers.
So let's get to it. There are a lot of concern Nigerians have about some of the items, and I'm very sure that you are also conversant with some of the agitations Nigerians are having on some of these items. But first and foremost is the suspicion and the rate and the pace which this supplementary budget raced through passage. Can you explain?
Well, thank you very much, Sheun. And first of all, I must empathize with Nigerians, and you know, based on all that is going on at this time. You'll understand that with the removal of the fuel subsidy, Nigerians are going through a whole lot. The standard of living has really dropped. A lot of people have fallen through the cracks, and there is need more than ever before for urgency on the part of government to be able to intervene to improve the lives of Nigerians. And in that light, you can understand why the National Assembly had to respond that quickly to the proposal from the executive arm of government for us to review the supplementary budget. You'll see as well, Sheun, that the budget proposal was presented on Tuesday. And the House of Representatives, the National Assembly as a whole, jointly spent the whole of Wednesday deliberating on the budget, reviewing all the issues, and actually invited all the heads of the agencies that were relevant to the budget to come to the National Assembly to defend all their submissions. So you had the Minister of the FCT, the Minister of Works, you had even the INEC chairman and his management, you had, you had all the heads of the agencies come to defend. And we did a diligent job, to be under Honorable Abubakar Bichi, to be able to go through all the provisions. And we saw no reason why we shouldn't expedite the passing of the supplementary budget.
Yes, some of the bills that concern a lot of Nigerians about their livelihood take a long time. However, this time around, there seems to be a rub my hand, I rub your hand kind of circumstance with you and the executive. Well, and that those who believe that the proper scrutiny were not done on some of the items that are saying here that a lot of Nigerians have described as simply bogus.
So, well, the only rub my hands that we know of is the rub your hands with our constituents. Because this assembly has remained very close to the constituents. You see, when you talk about the speed of laws, bills, and motions, we've been very, very proficient in the 10th Assembly and all of that. So the only obligation we have is to the citizenry, is to the constituents. And for us, when you look at things like agriculture and food security, which was one of the major aspects of the supplementary budget, we see no reason. There's hunger in the land. People are suffering, Sheun. If the federal government has said, these are provisions that are urgent, we see no reason not to expedite passing it. Now, when you talk about security, we're going through an insurgency. Almost every plenary day, you have a motion or the other that's related to security. So why do we want to delay, such provisions, of security? Why do we want to delay provisions that, are aimed at, bridging, housing deficits? Look at Abuja, our federal capital. Is everyone not worried about the state of insecurity? So why do we want to delay, provisions that would help us very quickly get our federal capital back?
Let's talk about those items. So when you and your colleagues say that Nigerians are suffering, it doesn't sound to a lot of the Nigerian people that you people actually understand the suffering. I mean, it looks like you guys are so much aloof with what is going on the ground, and it is in the manner in which you the reputation of the National Assembly hasn't been a good one for several years, and in some of the attitude and in some of the policy decision has not also shown that is a commitment, a nexus between the people and those who represent them in the National Assembly. And let me ask you, for example, there is a 28 billion line item allocated to the State House. Despite outcry by it, nothing was done to that line item. It was passed as it was.
Well, Seun, so if you're talking about items in the State House, right, as you understand, this is a supplementary budget. A new administration has just come on board. The new administration needs to be given the right sort of environment to be able to function, the right tools to be able to function. You would see as well that there are certain other provisions that we made adjustments to. For example, we feel the pains of students who need to be able to be concerned about how, they don't have to be concerned about how to pay for their fees. So you would see that we varied the amount that was initially proposed for the students' loan. It was practically doubled. And you'll see provisions as well that what's it called now? The presidential yacht that was, proposed under Navy, was removed totally. And so many other provisions that
I'm asking you in a specific question, and it's in the respect of the 28 billion. And part of it is the fact that there's a budget of 28 billion for the purchase of luxury vehicles for the president and the first lady, and the renovation of the residence, amongst all the spending for the State House. At this time, in our country, do you think that the members of the National Assembly will be more circumspect in looking at the figures that is going into buying luxury vehicles? Or is it just because you yourself and your colleagues are also buying luxury vehicles and that's why you don't see any problem in that?
So, Seun, just like you said, right, and I'll take you on that. You mentioned the idea of luxury vehicles, either for the executive or the legislature. Let me speak more for the legislature because, there's a lot.
I'd like you to touch on what you budgeted for the State House. You left it as it was presented to the National Assembly. Well, no scrutiny on that.
No, there was scrutiny. And there
so
was,
what was it that was changed?
Defense.
What was it?
There was a lot of defense. Now, a lot of those provisions did not change because we thought, yes, they actually need those vehicles, vehicles at this point in time to be able to start. It's a new administration.
You said that Nigerians are suffering.
Yes,
it's a new administration. Imagine that those kind of figures going to the executive arm of government does not show sensitivity to the suffering of the Nigerian people.
So, a new administration just resumed, right? This is a supplementary budget that is aimed at helping the administration to stabilize and to be able to hit the ground running as much as possible.
By buying luxury vehicles, Honorable?
You are shaping the narrative about luxury.
I'm asking a question. That is what has been captured.
You're looking at what
can Nigerians afford luxury?
It is not
for
luxury.
Any person that is representing them at this time.
So at this point in time,
isn't it sheer insensitivity to the Nigerian people?
So what you need as much as possible, right, is that if the presidency has asked for what it is that they need to be able to function, right, and they are given what it is to be able to function, Nigerians should be able to hold them to account as to what it is that they've been able to do with the mandate that has been given to them. You don't want anybody to have any excuses as to not having what it is to be able to function. And, I'll take you up on that. I'll mention as well that for us at the National Assembly, ours is to be able to hold the executive to account as much as possible. At this point in time, there's a lot, you see a lot of provisions for vehicles and things like that. And, we've had these conversations over time about made in Nigeria vehicles, about being able to patronize, what's it called? Companies in Nigeria, either assembled or all of that. And I'll bring your attention, Sean, to the fact that there is a policy, right, of government that was passed as at May this year, right? The National Automotive, I'll just read the provisions. The National Automotive Industry Development Plan, right, that states very clearly is aimed at enabling exponential increase in the local production numbers of vehicles reaching 40% local content, attaining 30% in locally produced electric vehicles, enforcing patronage of those vehicles by government and companies working on government contracts. This is what media, civil society, and even the legislature ought to be holding government to account for. If you've said you need these vehicles to be able to function, and we say, okay, yes, you need to be able to function, and we appropriate those amounts to you, for you, we should be able to hold them to account that how many of these vehicles are going to be made in Nigeria vehicles. So that is the concern that we have. But for you to say a new
So were you able to scrutinize to the point to ask how many of those vehicles that the executive said they want, the presidency said they want, that are going to be locally made based on the automotive policy of the country?
The automotive policy is extant. We have the legislature.
It says about 40%.
Yes, and we're going to make sure, in our oversight, to make sure that these things actually follow through. So that is a concern for us.
They say charity begins at home.
Yes,
are you obeying this policy at the National Assembly?
So I'll tell you. You see, this issue of vehicles for the National Assembly, just like the previous speaker had said, it's a conversation that happens every 4 years. And it's just unfortunate that many times we leave this conversation late in the day. At the expiration of every tenure of office of the National Assembly, the National Assembly bureaucracy makes arrangements, right, for a new set of lawmakers that are coming in, okay? I said in my statement, and I was taking up on that statement quite a lot, I said in my statement that there's an extant policy for the boarding of vehicles. Why do we wait till 4 years after the former 9th Assembly had already left with all the vehicles, a new set have arrived, right, without being able to have the right tools to be able to function? That is when we bring that conversation about vehicles. These conversations about the National Assembly procuring vehicles is a conversation from the preceding year before the resumption of a new assembly.
So the vehicles, the 360, the 360 Prado vehicles that has been purchased for your colleagues, you and your colleagues, have been procured effectively by the Honorable Femba Gabi Amila.
No, I didn't. I said the National Assembly bureaucracy. You have
that's a leadership,
that's different from the leadership show. And what I said to you is that most of these procurements are prepared for, right?
Bureaucracy, including the clerk of the National Assembly.
I'm not going to personalize.
The leadership of the bureaucracy.
I'm not going to personalize anything. But
so
you need to understand.
My question is that that process has been put in place before you resume in the 10th National Assembly.
Long before. And Sheon, I am providing details for us all to work on. Do you understand? Now, everybody is invested in the idea, right, about this issue of vehicles every 4 years. Why do we wait up until the point where this thing becomes an issue before we speak out about it? In my statement, if you look at it very well, Sheon, I stated very clearly that these are work tools that are provided for lawmakers to be able to function. And I provided very clearly, I stated it, that these vehicles don't belong to lawmakers. There's an extant policy that says after 4 years, these vehicles are deboarded. And I said, if that policy remains at the end of an expiration of a tenure, then members are given the option to buy. Why don't you wait until 2026 to be able to say, no, you're not going with these vehicles, this new
we don't need to get to 2026. Honorable, why are you not telling us how many of these vehicles have been deboarded? How many of these vehicles have been left? How many have been? If you want to be transparent, Honorable, if you're telling us that we are transparent, we want to tell you everything, why not start by saying the last lawmakers in the 9th Assembly, this is how many vehicles they've left out of the 360. This is how many of them that are fully paid for their own in the deboarding process. Can you tell us that today?
So I can
why not? I mean, instead of asking Nigerians to wait till 2026.
I'm not saying that. Listen very carefully. And I've told you, I said, I'm invested in the idea of us having a lot more transparency. I've provided full disclosure as much as possible on this issue of vehicles. Go read my statement very well. I stated very clearly that every 4 years, these vehicles are, procured and then deboarded. And then I gave Nigerians, I gave civil society, I gave media, because I have a background in civil society as well. It's my concern as well that, look, instead of waiting until, procurements have been done and concluded, there's the opportunity to say what is going to happen to these vehicles. At the right time, hold the National Assembly to account.
Do you have information as to those who have left?
As to those who have...
In the 9th Assembly?
I can assure you that there is nobody. Look, these are government policies. There is nobody that can live with a vehicle if the person hasn't done the right thing as per the extant...
As those Prado jeeps arrived?
Yes. It's been, like I said in my statement as well, they've been delivered in batches because...
Have you received yours?
No, I've not shown.
Why? What's the delay?
Well, because it hasn't gotten to me, at this point in time.
They're delivering it in batches?
Yes. And
how many have they delivered now?
I don't have those exact figures shown, but the Tajudeen Abbas leadership has insisted that a number of criteria will be followed. So first of all, people with one form of disability or the other were given these vehicles. Women were prioritized, and it's gone even, in some sort of...
I'll take you back to what you said about just a moment.
Right.
About the automotive policy.
Yes.
You said 40%. That is what... And this is a government agency. This is a government arm of government.
And
Can you tell us...
I discussed the policy with you.
Just a moment.
In all your conversations...
Let me ask the question,
right.
Honorable.
Okay.
You have said that the automotive policy, you read it, 40%. Yes. Can you tell us, out of the 360 vehicles, how many of those are going to be from locally produced vehicles?
So you can't be smart by half on this, show. You know by yourself, and it's very clear to Nigerians. This matter of vehicles broke on social media on a Sunday morning. Before 2 o'clock, we had a statement out because we're interested in the idea of being as transparent as possible about this. You know very well that the brand of these vehicles are Toyota Prados, right? I've told you that the point in time where those that are interested, people like myself that are interested in, look, if I was in the room where these decisions were made, of course, I'll make a case for why Nigeria vehicles should be bought.
But I'm telling you,
wait a minute.
I'm breaching the extant law, which says automotive policy has to be obeyed to the extent of 40%.
So if you listen,
local content.
If you listen very well, Seun, and I'm explaining this to you, I said in the preceding year to the resumption of a new assembly, most of these procurements are provisioned for. As far back as, to my knowledge, as far back as the first quarter of this year, this is a policy that came in as at May 23rd. And I'm telling you, I'm pointing it out to you. If really we're interested in the idea of addressing these issues holistically and not just, to be honest, it's with all that Nigerians are going through, it doesn't sound right. It doesn't sit right. And for many of us, there are concerns about that. But I'm telling you that change takes intentional, deliberate steps.
Why are you not showing the attitude of change?
No, but I'm telling you on this.
And you have talked about the automotive policy. It does look that you are in breach of that policy as a National Assembly.
The automotive policy came on stream as at May 23rd. I've told you that as far back as the first quarter. I've told you, Seun, if you are listening very well, that as far back as 2022, before the resumption of a new assembly, you don't wait until members resume. You make provisions for new members coming. At that point in time is when people have that conversation. And when we leave, because, Seun, again, this whole matter goes out and then it sort of dies down. Remember, Seun, in previous assemblies, when they've addressed this issue of vehicles, previous people have been quiet about it. Previous assemblies have been quiet about it. This is different. Under the Tajudeen Abbas-led leadership, our legislative agenda is one of openness, of transparency. We were upfront about it, and we told Nigerians exactly. Perhaps the reason many Nigerians are even...
So somewhat like a fait accompli.
No, Seun, understand me. Understand with me. I'm going somewhere. One of the reasons why perhaps there's a lot of outcry and a lot of anger is because of how much details were provided. And it was intentional. So that let us move in that direction of change. When you have a new assembly coming on, 360 members, 109 members in the Senate, what is going to happen to the vehicles that were used by the previous assembly? Are we able to lobby? Are we able to do anything about changing that? But aside of that, Seun...
We are out of time.
Shey, you don't want to address the issue.
No, we are addressing it.
Legislators have a lot of work to do in terms of oversight, in terms of constituency outreach. A very important point, right, is the fact that no one, number one, should be at the mercy of the executive at any point in time in carrying out this.
Right.
To be able to prevent...
We need to leave it at that because we're totally out of time. But I must appreciate your time.
Albeit
very difficult to defend, but I know that you're trying your best, and I've tried to listen, even at some point where you make statements that are very uncomfortable, but then it's because of Nigerians anyway. That's what we're here. Thank you so much, Honorable, for joining us.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for having me.
But that's our show for tonight. I'm Sean Kimale. I'll see you on Sunday at 8 p.m. Bye-bye, everyone.